Welcome to the Merrily End. My name's Mark Machado. I'm joined by Sri Lanka's premier cricket historian, Nicholas Brookes. This episode is powered by Kidrated, which is a lovely website that helps you find days out. At the moment, it's only in London. So if you want to read about what kids think about Buckingham Palace, Tower of London, Madame Tussauds, then you can go on that and kind of plan your days out around London. But there is plans, of course, to spread the website across the world. So go give it a look. It's a very special episode, isn't it, Nick? Because we have got Dr. Ben Hildred, an academic from Durham University, who's done lots of research into specifically cricket and Sri Lanka on the show today to talk to us about his research. Just a quick reminder, if you haven't come across us before, we talk about Sri Lankan content all the time, constantly through the week, across all the different platforms. So do give us a follow, do give us a subscribe. We're not just on YouTube, we're on all your podcast apps, social media as well, across Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all the good ones and even some of the bad ones as well. Anyway, Ben, thanks for joining us on Merrily End. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what your research was and when you did it and how you did it?
Thanks for having me, for one thing. Nick and I have talked about this for a little while, and it's nice to come on and talk to you about it. I'm a social anthropologist. So for people that don't know, anthropology is a social science that looks at kind of human relationships. Particularly social anthropology is about relationships. It's very similar to kind of sociology. There are elements of history in there, political science, this kind of thing. But the key thing is that people go away for a long period of time. The core fundamental is what we call ethnographic fieldwork. So I spent 2 years in Sri Lanka playing cricket, watching cricket, learning cricket, getting obsessed with cricket. In particular, thinking about how cricket was being promoted for reconciliation after the Civil War, and trying to work out if the claims that cricket was this incredible thing for reconciliation, to work out if that was real or not. And so, yeah, that's what I spent my time doing.
I think the first question I've got is what first attracted you to this type of project?
Because I guess the primary reason is because I've been into cricket since I was very young. And Sri Lanka have always kind of been my second team. I think they're a very popular second team for a lot of people. I really remember growing up, being a teenager, watching kind of the beginning of Mahela and Sanga's career, and obviously Malinga coming through, and kind of being really enticed by their particular brand of cricket. But basically, I was doing my undergrad in St Andrews. I was already quite committed to doing anthropology by that point. I think I wanted to do research, and this was, I think, 2011. So the World Cup, the T20 World Cup was happening. And I was reading Cricket Info, and there was this piece, which was, the headline was, the war is over, the economy is booming, what Sri Lanka needs now is a win in the World Cup final. And almost as if by magic, the project kind of sprung up, because I was like, why is war, the economy, cricket, how are these on the same level? Like, what's going on here? And then I think you'll remember that Sangakkara gave his Colin Cowdery lecture around that time. I still can't, the chronology is always murky in my head. It might have been before or after, but I became really aware that there had been this move after the Civil War ended to kind of promote cricket for reconciliation. And I just thought, man, if I can make a career out of studying cricket, then I feel like I will have won. So I just kind of went for it. And from my undergrad, I did a thesis on cricket. For my master's, I went out to Sri Lanka for the first time, and then I applied for the PhD, and I got it. And yeah, rest is history.
And Ben, yeah, I had a ringside seat for a lot of this, and I guess we had similar experiences that we went to Sri Lanka to write about cricket without having like much knowledge of it before we actually were like dived straight in. So I wanted to ask you to reflect a bit on your first memories of like going to Sri Lanka and Sri Lankan cricket, and ask you what was there that you expected and what was there that surprised you?
Mm. Um, yeah, I think at some point we should maybe talk about how Nick and I met. I think it's I'm very fortunate to have been friends with Nick since very early on in my field work, and we kind of have traded ideas for a long time. Um, so I actually went to Sri Lanka for the first time in 2015, which was between my undergrad and the PhD, and I kind of wanted to work out if the project was viable. So I went out for 6 weeks, and I turned up on the first day. I went straight down to Gaul, jet lagged to hell. Sri Lanka were playing Pakistan, I think, and I was in Peddler's Cafe in the
Mm.
fort. I was having a bit of breakfast there, and there was um, a girl on the phone who I could overhear her saying, "Oh, what's the score? Like, what's happening?" And it became very clear that she was talking about the cricket, and so I used it as an opportunity to kind of go over and say hi and like kind of meet someone. It's the first day in a new place, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I was just on the phone with Andrew Fernando. He's at the ground. He's telling me what's going on." So that's how I met Andrew. That's how I kind of got to know a lot about Sri Lankan cricket quite quickly. Um, and I I mean, I just fell in love with it. It was very clear. I mean, I went for 6 weeks, and within the first couple of days, I knew the project was viable, and I just enjoyed the rest of my time. Everyone was so friendly. Huge shout out to Jeremy Bolling, who sadly passed away a few years ago. I very strongly remember staying at his house in Colombo and him coming out of the house with two sixes of Lion Lager in his hands and just saying, "Welcome to Sri Lanka, Machang," and just give me a big hug. And we sat and had beers and we talked cricket for the evening. And I thought, damn, I have one. Okay, this is great. So I don't know what I expected, but I received a lot of love and enthusiasm, I think. Um, in terms of what surprised me, the thing that really surprised me was actually the weird lack of cricket, which I found this when I did the PhD. And Nick, you probably you'll know where I'm going with this. Softball cricket is everywhere. People are playing with tennis balls, they're playing with tape balls, they're playing with rubber balls. It's everywhere. But hardball cricket, the cricket that we watch on TV, is quite expensive. Um, there are barriers to entry in that sense. People don't play it as often, and not only that, but the way that the league structure is set up means that the team that I played with, if you didn't pass the first round of the Division 3 tournament, you'd only play 4 or 5 games, and then your season's done. So you're cobbling together friendlies, you're kind of playing on off days, on Poya days. So there was actually way less cricket to look at than I first anticipated. I think that was quite a shock. So instead of just focusing on the one team, that's partly why I looked at various different aspects, coaching, the development sector, this kind of thing. Yeah.
And like, I mean, it's super interesting that you played cricket while you were in Sri Lanka. Tell us a bit about how you got involved with the Titans, how easy that process was, and how different that experience was to playing cricket in England.
Um, so yeah, I guess first thing to say is that the team that I played with, I call them Titans Cricket Club, but it's a pseudonym. And
Oh,
in the way that I talk about
I
them,
thought I misremembered that.
Yeah.
yeah. So it's a pseudonym. Nick, we spoke off there earlier, knows a few of my friends and kind of knows a bit more about the people that I played with. So we won't mention them for kind of for privacy reasons. But so Titans were they're a multi-ethnic club. They played out of a suburb in the south of Colombo called Wellawatha, and I got into playing with them because I needed a cricket bat. My bat had just broken like a few weeks before I was going out to Sri Lanka, so I had all the rest of my gear, but I didn't have a bat, and I went immediately on Facebook Marketplace and found this guy who had a couple of bats. They looked pretty nice. He said, "Come meet me at NCC, at Nondescript Cricket Club." And so I went, and we started talking. He's asking why I was here. He'd lived in the UK for a few years, and I said I want to play for a team. I'm here to do field work, and he said, "Cool, come and join us." So I started training with them not long after that, and they were my kind of consistent touch point for the 2 years that I spent out there. Most Sundays I was down at the ground training, hanging out on other occasions, going to the bar with the guys that weren't Muslim and that did drink. So yeah.
How did you two guys meet? You mentioned Relawatha, so I imagine you were in a similar kind of neighborhood, was it?
I mean, Nick, do you want to take this one? I mean, I can say as well.
I would say a stone's throw, probably a cricket ball throw for Ben. I imagine he can throw a cricket ball slightly further than me.
Maybe not throw, but like a solid whack. You could,
a good slog. It was literally
a good slog, yeah.
100 yards apart in Mount Lavinia. Yeah. Andrew Fidel Fernando put us in touch, and then we sort of exchanged a text, realised we lived down the road from each other, went for some beers at Lion Pub, and then have been great friends ever since. And it was like hugely helpful, I think, especially for me, because I mean, Ben was already a sort of qualified academic by this stage. I was just a bumbling idiot wandering around trying to find things out. So to have someone to bounce ideas off, and someone who was doing something very similar to you without treading on your toes, was like an incredible bit of serendipity.
Yeah, which I mean, the island is known for. I don't know if listeners will know this, but the word serendipity kind of was coined because I think Sri Lanka used to be called Serendib, or one of its names was Serendib.
It's the ancient Arabic name for Sri Lanka is Serendip. Yeah.
And honestly, once you've lived there, you start to really believe in it. Like, I'm not a superstitious bloke at all, but some kind of weird things happened that were really good. And kind of meeting Nick was one of them. Yeah, Andrew got in touch and said, "Oh, I know this guy that's just come to the island. He's going to start writing this book." I think you arrived about a month after me, very, very close in Mount Lavinia on, what was the name of that road? Beach Road or something.
Beach Road.
Yeah. And so it was great because I think I helped Nick out a little bit with the early stages of the book when he was talking about the history and thinking about like the ethnic conflict or the beginnings of that. And then Nick was really kind and put me in touch with a lot of people, like, because Nick had different kinds of contacts. He knew people in Sri Lanka cricket. We met Ranjit Fernando and David, good friends, kind of through that. And obviously, Nick really helped me get into the schoolboy cricket scene, which is really important for thinking about what cricket means in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
We had a good time.
Should we talk a little bit about the actual academic work that you did there and what your kind of wider conclusions were from the whole project?
Yeah, I mean, basically, if the question is does cricket enable reconciliation in Sri Lanka, I think the short answer is basically kind of no, it doesn't. But the longer answer is that it is far more interesting. And basically what I found was that cricket does make individuals better people, or individuals at least believe that they become better people by playing cricket. They learn the value of discipline, of hard work, of team values. It's good for interpersonal relationships. It tends to like smooth the tensions that So like the idea of team unity helps people who might be in fractious relationships kind of get along better with one another. But the thing that I found, and this is like true of, I think I want to make this clear that this is a consequence of what sport is as a social enterprise. It's not like cricket in general. It's how sport developed as like a phenomenon. Sport tends to promote this idea of kind of individual responsibility towards like the greater whole. So if we think that sport in the like 19th century kind of grew up at the same time as the nation state, so countries were kind of forming in the way that we know them today, the idea of citizenship kind of played into both. So when you met your opponents on a sports field, you were meeting them as equals, as fellow citizens, and that really helped kind of cement the idea of citizenship in the nation. But that then means that people kind of, they improve as individuals, but they also limit themselves as individuals. And so you find, like I found a lot of my friends talked about this idea of control. It's very common in cricket, this kind of like risk averse idea, like, you minimize the potential for failure in order to succeed. And what that meant was people were trying to have this weird paradox of like, well, if I'm successful in the team, other people in the team obviously can't succeed as much. So there's kind of like this constant like equilibrium thing going on. And in all of that, it means that people aren't questioning the social system around them. So they're learning how to like navigate kind of social situations. Cricket helps them to like learn how to like get by, but it never kind of encourages them to like think about like what's actually holding them back. So the thing that I've really hit on in the last couple of years since I finished the PhD was like, cricket helps people to overcome the odds, but it doesn't help them to change the odds. So they don't learn how like systemic issues are causing a problem that are holding them back. And this is why I sort of said that cricket wouldn't work for reconciliation in the form it is right now, because basically people are being encouraged. If individuals change because of cricket, then the solution is just to provide more cricket. And that's what a lot of NGOs are doing. Like in the development sector, they're like hosting more games. They're making sure that people from the north are playing people from the south, etc. But if the emphasis is on individuals changing, then they'll never address the systemic issues that might cause those tensions in the first place. So my big conclusion was basically that we actually kind of need to change sport itself, and that might help us to kind of use it in a way that is beneficial in the future. So it's not the situation, it's kind of the components of the situation, as it were.
If you were looking for kind of better outcomes from playing sport in terms of trying to reconciliation terms, would it have been beneficial if the sport wasn't cricket? So cricket, in my view, is a individual sport masquerading as a team sport. I mean, you hear people say that all the time.
Agree.
Where other sports such as football or rugby, you're much more reliant on your teammates, and you have to have kind of more trust in their ability. So therefore, in your kind of academic opinion, if Sri Lanka was a more football playing place, or if rugby, I know rugby is big in Sri Lanka, but if it was a bigger thing in Sri Lanka, would it help, or could rugby help more in reconciliation than it could be than cricket would?
I think no. Still, it's so what the literature says, and so there's a piece I use in the thesis that's about football, and obviously, like it's a more fluid thing. There has to be cooperation in a way that there doesn't quite have to be in cricket. If you have like Messi and then 10 other blokes that have never played football before, you can't win a game. but you kind of probably can in cricket sometimes. You'll just get one amazing guy who can carry a team. The thing is in football is that and in rugby as well, there's still this idea of role. So like the idea that we are all equal, we are all part of the same team, we're all team members. But implicitly, people know who the better players are, or they know who's supposed to be doing certain jobs at certain times. And that kind of still creates that atmosphere where you have to work together towards a common goal. And obviously these can be good values, right? They're not inherently bad. It's just that they perpetuate a system. They're kind of they're perpetuating the way that we currently understand the world around us. And we all know, as you know, the world around us is crumbling a bit right now, that system is not actually working that well. So I see kind of sport as being part of this bigger picture of where we're just training ourselves to do the same thing. We're not thinking outside the box anymore. And that's why I sort of say about, if you want to make sport better for things like reconciliation, you have to change sport fundamentally. I don't know how to do that though. That's probably one of the next things. Just to put that out there. I've opened up Pandora's box, and now I'm panicking, and I need to work out how to close it back up again.
And like looking at cricket in Sri Lanka from a more, I suppose, logistical perspective, it's quite unique, right, Ben? Because it doesn't rely on a county, state, sort of territorial style system. It's founded upon clubs that are in Colombo, and then you have like, I mean, I guess we'd still say, right, like vast swathes of the country which are pretty much untapped in terms of potential. You have done a lot of travel to the north and, I mean, looked at these kind of things. How much do you see? I mean, I'm thinking about the banner one team, one nation, but like how much do you still think Sri Lankan cricket is Colombo and then the rest of the country?
It's a good question. Yeah, and I mean, it's funny you asking me this because obviously you and I have spent a long time. I think this is one of the things, the cricket system in Sri Lanka was something that we really struggled to wrap our heads around. Nick from kind of a historical perspective, and then me trying to like work out what's happening now. I suppose a few listeners will know, but maybe not all of them, that like, so Sri Lanka is a nation of 22, probably a bit more million people. And the kind of cricket talent pool is tiny. It's absolutely tiny compared to that. It's, as I said before, hardball cricket is not that is not played as much as you'd expect. And then like the elite cricketers who end up playing for the national team come from this small section of Sri Lankan society. They play in the public schools. They go to these clubs, and so there is this kind of system where, like Sri Lanka punches well above its weight, is what I'm saying. Basically, given the resources it has, it does incredibly well. The fact that Sri Lanka has won a World Cup, has won a couple of World Cups, and has got all sorts of other trophies and accolades is just incredible. I think that the system does need to change, and I think, given that how Sri Lankan administration runs, there's always issues. Things are kind of, is there a board? Isn't there a board? Is it run by the government? Isn't it run by the government? Like, there's, I think continuity is one of the key issues. There are, Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's maybe even like 30 clubs in the Premier 1 A and B. I can't actually remember.
Yeah, Marky, you might know, because I know they're starting to reduce it, right? That they're bringing them down year on year now.
Yeah, there's a restructure that's kind of ongoing at the moment. So there will be fewer first class teams. I think that's going to take a few more years, but it is something that is happening. I'm not sure what impact that's going to have on cricket outside the big urban areas, though. In terms of, does it move the dial at all? I'm not sure it will.
Well, this is the thing. It's really interesting because this is why they started this like inter-provincial tournament. You know, with the Dambulla and Candy and Colombo and whatever. I think there's 4 teams, and now I think there's maybe 6 teams. Um, I've met a lot of people in various administration roles. They really admire the Sheffield Shield system. They always wanted to have 6 clubs or 6 teams when they, you know, everyone could recognize that having that many teams that many clubs was a problem. We know that there's a lot of like corruption when it comes to the kind of trading of votes. People like Sumatipalo would kind of like definitely be trying to like get votes in from certain clubs, um, and that's why they hung around for so long. And so they always wanted this kind of like 6-side tournament, and they've kind of got this now. And I do think it will help in some ways as like the figure point for players around the country. So um, teams in the north, just knowing that there is a provincial side that in some way kind of represents you at the top, has got to be of some benefit. Um, but obviously, a lot of these guys are Sinhalese. They're maybe not from the area at all. And as you're saying, Mark, I don't think it will shift the dial on that front. There's been a lot of so to kind of get back to Nick's question about like the outstations as they call them, like there has been a lot of effort in the last 2 or 3 years. I was there last year, and I found this that the SLC has been pumping money into infrastructure. It recognizes now that it has to spread the game beyond Colombo. Um, you know, they have to get there's so much talent out there that they could be pulling in. So they have been putting money into building grounds, into laying down nets, into coaching kind of programs. They've been, you know, making sure that coaches in the north and in the east are getting their qualifications. Um, as I said at the very beginning, there's not a lot of hardball cricket at all currently, but there are signs that is starting to trend upwards now, and that more people are getting into those sides, and indeed are being brought to Colombo to kind of compete at the higher levels. I think in the long term, they want to make sure that Colombo is not the epicenter of everything. But you know, they right now they're still trying to bring people to Colombo for that.
Can we have a chat about what's going on cricket wise in terms of the north and the east? Because I know you spent quite a bit of time there, and you've written. Me and you have talked in the past about some of the work some of the NGOs have done up there. One in particular that does quite a lot for spreading cricket up there, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Foundation of Goodness are the NGO that you refer to, and I did work with them very closely, and I'm very grateful to them for their enthusiasm and effort, and for kind of providing me with a bit of a home and ability to go to some of these places, because you know, the far flung parts of Sri Lanka could be quite difficult to get to if you don't have the means or the wherewithal to kind of get there. So I went to the north. I've been to Jaffna a few times. I've spent maybe just under a quarter of my time there, I think, over the 2 years, kind of on various trips. I'd go up for a month at a time, and I worked with St John's, which is one of the big schools in Jaffna. And I looked at some of the things that they're doing, and particularly that their old boys are doing. They're really sustained by the guys that used to go to that school. They're putting a lot of money into projects on the island in Jaffna, and as I said, SLC are starting to create infrastructure, but their SLC are coming behind a lot of independently funded stuff that has been going on for a lot longer. So SLC are only really just catching up now. So there is huge appetite, and obviously we saw Viascand kind of play in the IPL. And I actually, weirdly enough, I met him as a teenager back in 2015. I think he was clearly the biggest guy in the school. I think he played for Central College, and he was this big ripping leg spinner, and kind of there was at that stage not a lot of optimism that he would ever play kind of at the big stages. I remember talking about this in my master's thesis and saying, I quoted someone who said, like, where do they go? What happens? Like, there is nowhere. But obviously, history has proven otherwise. He got into the IPL. He was picked up. He played a lot for Jaffna Stallions and then Jaffna Kings. And there is now, they always talk about having a figurehead, but now that there is one, there's a role model to follow. There are cases that people can point to, and they will, efforts being put in to get there. So I think we're at a really interesting time. I'd love to go back in another couple of years. I mean, I'd love to go back tomorrow, to be frank, but I'd love to go back in another couple of years and sort of see what's happened again, because I'm sure that, things are starting to come up now. And just lastly, on the foundation, they do a really great program where they take national level coaches who have taught like Sri Lanka A or like Sri Lanka under-19s, or even people who have coached Mahela, people who have coached Anga, like they've coached all levels. They take them in a minibus, and they go to the north and the east, and they carry out these cricket coaching workshops. It's one day. It's like local schoolboys. They all come to the ground. They're so happy to have this kind of this guru of cricket in front of them, and they put their heart and soul into it, and they learn a lot. And one of the things the foundation do that's very canny is that they're keeping tabs on who are the skilled players in these areas, and they're putting special effort into developing certain individuals. So there's a strapping left arm seamer. I mean, this kid was like 16, 17, but he was enormous, like this really strong bloke bowling gas. And they were like, yeah, that guy's definitely going to play for Sri Lanka at some point, probably in the next few years. So like there are people who are coming through, and I think because of that, there's hope.
Where was that guy from the north as well, or
from Jaffna? Yeah, I think he was another guy from Central, or possibly St John. But I was there last year. We did a camp in the north in Jaffna, and they go back and they form relationships with these boys, and they like check in on them when they go back, and they're keeping tabs, and it's a really clever system. It means that everyone benefits, but also Sri Lankan cricket as a system benefits as well. People are getting opportunities that they wouldn't have had otherwise.
I find the work that the Foundation of Goodness do absolutely unbelievable, Nick. I mean, there's so many players in the men's and the women's setups who have come through those pathways that they've created. Increasingly, from we've spent a lot of time on this episode talking about how there's kind of cricket deserts, basically, where it's difficult if you're good. If you're to get noticed, but so many players they bring through, like in the north, and there's girls from rural areas who come through and played full senior cricket for the national side. It's just quite phenomenal, isn't it, Nick?
Yeah, I think especially the impact they've had on women's cricket in Sri Lanka, and you look at that Asia Cup winning squad and how many of those players have come through the foundation. It's like incredible the work that they've been doing. And I think especially in the Sri Lankan context where like attitudes towards women's cricket have sometimes been, I would say a little bit disparaging or not. Yeah. But I think that's something that really seems to be changing, Ben. Is that something that you've noticed in your experience over the past decade around girls' participation in the sport and like women's cricket more generally?
Sorry, I just didn't realize I've been doing this for a decade now, but I have. No, you're totally right. I mean, so that Asia Cup winning, it was more than half, wasn't it, of the squad?
I think so, yeah.
Had some relationship, because obviously, sometimes they're claimed and they have only been involved lightly, but Turindu Kaushal. I think if I got her name correctly, she's been, from like 4 or 5 or whatever. She's grown up and been really sponsored by that system, and they're I've always seen them as they're an athlete development NGO as much as the reconciliation thing is always kind of a little bit like an additional bonus rather than their core kind of project. They might disagree with me, and we can argue that later at some point, but they do an incredible job. And women's cricket, yeah, you're right. It's gone from being disparaging to being, I guess, it was sort of disparaging to lukewarm at best, but now it's like lukewarm to being like, oh no, actually people are really into it. And when they're winning stuff, that's the thing. Sri Lankans love winning. They love the successes, and they love to celebrate those successes. So anything that can kind of help the national sides to achieve those accolades is going to go a long way towards improving the support for the team.
Absolutely incredible that you've been doing this for a decade, Ben. I can't.
It's been nice. It's been really nice.
Just the final question on the foundation of goodness. I mean, is that the model that NGOs need to try and replicate? And because I assume you would have looked at a number of other NGOs, and your main research was looking at the Royal Reconciliation. We're quite far away from the end of the war now, thankfully. I mean, do NGOs need to just and obviously there's USAID and stuff like that has come to an end, so the NGOs will be struggling to find ways to fund themselves. Do they need to maybe reconsider the role that cricket's playing, and even actually their role in how they can reconcile the island in total, or is that just a bit too mad a question?
So, no, it's not mad a question at all. I think, as I kind of have alluded to, the first thing to say is that I didn't actually look at too many other NGOs because there simply aren't that many NGOs who are doing stuff with cricket, at least not as their core focus. There's lots of NGOs in Sri Lanka who make sure that they have bats and balls and equipment on the bus when they go, so that they can they can get the kids involved. It's like a really good way of getting people to kind of come into their thing, and then they'll educate them about whatever it is that they're hoping to deliver. But I think the core problem, as I said earlier, is that because the idea is that cricket enables change primarily at an individual level, or the idea is that it promotes change at an individual level, often these projects are about or they're measured by delivery. It's about how many cricket matches we held. It's about how many pitches we laid. It's how many workshops we put on. It's all about providing more cricket so that more people can change as individuals. I was there last year and I delivered a series of workshops with cricket coaches who are core figures in their local community. And I spoke to them not just as cricket coaches, but as those figureheads in the local community about the values that they were actually trying to inspire amongst the people that they work with. And I think that is the direction of travel. If you want to, the foundation do an incredible work with the structure, as we've said, but if you want to improve things from a change perspective to actually you have to get people thinking about what change means and how to achieve it. It's not just about, we put this stuff out there and some good will happen as a consequence. It's actually, what do we want? What do we need? How do we get there? And even thinking outside the box a little bit. So yeah, I did these workshops with coaches and thinking about what are the things that aren't recognized. And I learned a lot. Local cricket coaches really struggle with the fact that if they get injured, there is no, they can get hit by a ball at any point. There's no protection for them. There is no insurance scheme or anything. They just can't work. And So one of my big recommendations when I spoke to the SLC last year was, can we set up some kind of coaching insurance system whereby if you are registered as a coach in Sri Lanka, there is a little bit of money that will help you if you get injured at work and you can't work. And this was something that they were very open to. So I think there's like little things like that where you're peeling the layers back and exploring like what the issues are and focusing on fixing them. Then we might kind of get towards reconciliation at a later date. It has to be a holistic approach. You have to think about everything.
It is a bit mad. It is a bit mad though, Nick, isn't it? Can you imagine turning up to the ECB and being like, right, there's a lot of unrest in Britain. Can you fix this? I do wonder if like we just expect too much from cricket in Sri Lanka. I mean, I suppose that's kind of the conclusion that Ben's come to, right? That, I mean, it's quite crazy what we're expecting one sport to do here, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we do expect a lot, but I think that's also a reflection of how powerful an emblem cricket is for Sri Lankan society, right? And how it's so central to like Sri Lankan culture. I was thinking, doing this and asking Ben about his first memories of my first memories of arriving in Sri Lanka. And I remember staying at an Airbnb of a guy who said he wasn't a cricket fan, but the cricket was on in the background because that's just like a thing. And but yeah, anyway, I digress. I wanted to go back to ask you, Ben, you talked about how most of Sri Lanka plays softball and hardball cricket is still the preserve very much of the elite urbanized, and there are huge barriers to entry that are involved with playing red ball cricket. Do you know of any like pathways or of anything SLC is trying to do to kind of bridge that gap between softball and hardball cricket? Because as far as I know, there haven't been, like Malinga obviously came from softball cricket, but he was kind of like a freak, right? He turned up to a training camp and got in that way. Is there an effort to like try and, see if there's a Don Bradman of softball playing cricket in Trinco and see like, can he, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I think there is like, just to tie it back to what Mark was saying about the expectations that we kind of place on cricket, I think these problems are huge, but the SLC is really starting to like earnestly tackle them now. And I mentioned those workshops in the east and in the north, but SLC is also building grounds. They're also like they're starting to like develop areas that cricket can be played, because one of the big problems is that cricket is so popular that it can be really hard to book a ground. Like, especially if you live in Colombo, one of the reasons that we didn't have that many games was because it can be really tricky to find a ground that isn't 2 hours away to play in. And the same is true in the north and east. So you kind of need at least matting to play hardball cricket on, preferably turf. And Division 3, which is the lowest level. So in Sri Lankan cricket, there's kind of, you've got your, obviously your international, and then you've got that provincial tournament that I mentioned. And then you've got division, you've got your Premier, which is Premier A and B, which is like where, your international players will play in. But then you've got Division 2 and Division 3, and that's it. 3 divisions. It's wild to me that the idea of a pyramid is a misnomer, because it's more like this. It's like flat, right? And Division 3 is like weirdly hard because of it. Nick, you asked me what's it like playing cricket in Sri Lanka before. It's really tricky, because like sometimes you'll get a guy, like an old guy who isn't great, and feels a bit like a village environment. And then the next you might get some like strapping lad who's 17 who's bowling bounces at you, and it's really tricky. And I've now lost my train of thought. In terms of, so what they're trying to do in the east is make sure that there are more opportunities to play Division 3 cricket. So they're trying to provide more grounds, which then means that more teams can be had, which then means that system, that local community of hardball cricket will develop. It used to be that you just get the occasional school would have a ground and they would play. But now that there's much more effort to having more teams. And in terms of pathways, the SLC work with the foundation to do some of that. They're keeping tabs together, and there's a lot of information sharing, which is really good to see that people are trying to like make sure that if there is someone out there that they can promote and they can push forward, that they're being picked up. Yeah.
So I feel like every time there's an election in Sri Lanka, there's talk of a new stadium imminently about to be built if people win, either in the north or the. I mean, what's your take on building a stadium in 90,000 stadium in Jaffna? Will that solve all the issues that the island has?
No, it obviously won't solve all the issues. I think with what Nick was saying before, I think it's not just that we think that cricket is good. It's like we have this idea that sport is unequivocally good, that it'll just do something. But I do think that. So it's really interesting. Like we haven't really touched on politics that much, but obviously cricket has been used as a political kind of bargaining chip for as long as there's been money in it. I think Nick his book outlines this really nicely, that after the World Cup win, suddenly there's this influx of money, and suddenly all of these like very altruistic administrators get replaced with people who are career politicians and looking to kind of move their own interests forward. You're right. There's always this sense that there will be this mystical kind of stadium built. The one in Jaffna, the last I heard, and this is, it drives me wild because it makes me doubt my own knowledge all the time. As a researcher, it gives me, like, Sri Lankan cricket gives me anxiety because I'm just trading on rumor a lot of the time. The last I heard is that they had found quite a large swathe of land close to Jaffna, but it's very salty, and there's rumors about they're going to build this desalination plant to kind of like improve the irrigation in the town, improve the water supply. If they can do that, then they can start building. But as ever, you get this situation whereby there's a lot of like dominoes that have to fall in order for the thing to happen. And until that point, it's always going to just appear as a, as we said before, like this mystical thing that won't quite happen. Yeah.
But it seems to me, I don't know if you guys agree, that would be a step in the right direction, right? Like we've had this conversation before, Marky, that it's frustrating that the LPL has a team that's based in Jaffna by name, but has never played a game in Jaffna, and that if we could move towards LPL or some kind of domestic cricket league that played games in Jaffna or Trinco or all around the island, as opposed to the same hubs of Kandy, Dambulla, Colombo over and over again, that would be something which improved cricket's kind of outreach within the island.
I do think as well. I mean, I was being a bit facetious saying if you built a 90,000 seat stadium in Jaffna, would that solve all the problems? But actually, I mean, and admittedly, I've never been to Jaffna. Sadly, I would love to go. But I do think if you were to build a stadium there and there was a concerted effort to put international games there, I think it would. I mean, if you imagine playing an India series over there, or imagine just anyone turning up over there, the local economy would just benefit from it. From, if not just people turning up to watch the game, cameras, crews rolling in, people working on it. Would the hotels? There'd definitely be kind of 30 people from each team need a place to stay for a few days, right? So I think there's kind of economic benefits beyond. Isn't it great that there's cricket being played there, which I suppose is would help massively. So right, would make people up there who feel like this team isn't for them actually maybe this team is for them. I don't like to get too involved in the politics of it because I've never lived there and I've had the privilege of being of largely been unaffected by the war. So I don't want to comment too much about it, but I do think, I mean, the Jaffna LPL team, since it's existed, has basically been one of the most, if not the most successful franchise cricket team in the last 7 or 8 years. It's incredibly, it's a tragedy that they've not played in Jaffna, isn't it?
Massively, and I know some of the guys that work in that team. The reason why they've been so successful is because their backroom staff are just incredible. Like their team manager is a very talented coach, a very clued up guy who understands how to develop players and how to pick people and how to motivate a team. Like Jaffna is a very, as you say, a very frustrating place because there is obviously it's been sadly very hard hit by the war, and it's still taking tentative steps to development, but they have this strong set of old boys of people who maintain interests in the town, who have been developing stuff, who have been putting infrastructure in, and it does feel like the stadium is kind of the last piece in the puzzle for that. It is such a tragedy that they haven't played there yet, but I know that they will one day. Like it is a matter of time. The amount of talk about the stadium suggests that there is continued effort, and I don't think. Obviously, there are these roadblocks in the way, but people are trying to overcome them. And you're right. I think it would be a huge thing for the North. I think every time I go back to Jaffna, I love it a little bit more. Things are building up now. The atmosphere there is starting to become way more positive. Mark, you were saying about things coming in, like they've built a few more kind of premium hotels recently, which obviously is not for everyone, but it is a sign of kind of economic development and an interest. And tourism is kind of on an upward trend. So I think if in 10, 15, 20 years time we can say we could be watching games there, then that would be an incredible thing. I went to the Battle of the North, which is the big match between St John's and Central, and I absolutely adored that. That was such a great 3 days just to go see all of because the Tamil diaspora is so big in Jaffna. People would come from the States, they'd come from the UK, they'd come from Australia to watch this game. We were so aware of how international this community was and how much care and love had been put into the local kind of place. And I really want to see it thrive in the future because it fully deserves to. And given how hard everyone works, I think they deserve to get the rewards from that.
I will be honest with you, Ben. My main motivation, or the thing I love to see more than anything, is Sri Lanka winning. And I wonder if you'd given any much thought to the role that kind of private enterprise, and I'm talking really about the IPL sides and owners, might play in terms of developing cricket, and how that might end up having a kind of social impact somewhere down the road.
I think obviously more money because obviously the IPL owners have so much now, and they're as we will be aware in the UK, they've bought up a lot of the 100 franchises as well. Like there is something, and as much as people worry about the money and the impact of that money, like we always sort of talk about money impacting the game detrimentally, but it cannot be ignored that in places like Sri Lanka, that money is going to go towards infrastructure that's really crucial to developing cricket on the island for everyone, which it currently isn't. And it currently isn't for everyone, not because there is this belief that people shouldn't have it, but because there is this just basic inequality in provision of infrastructure. So I think that there will be a massive impact if the LPL can be kind of extended a little bit, if they could maybe expand to 8 teams, if they can think about hosting games, as we talked about in Jaffna, even if it was like a temporary stadium or something. Like there have to be grounds there. The big match occurs on Central College, and it's not really a ground that could hold people, but there are turf wickets in the north that could host games. That would definitely provide people with a sense that there is an opportunity here. There is somewhere that if I play well enough and if I improve enough, I can partake in this. The step that you're making an allusion to in terms of like the reconciliation aspect, the IPL money would need to go into programs that work in the local community beyond cricket. So not just providing more cricket, but doing like what I said before about teaching coaches how to be figures in their community, how to recognize their potential as community figures and people who can really like improve young men's and young women's lives from an educational standpoint as much as a sporting one.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and it strikes me that Jaffna is a stone's throw from one of the biggest franchises in the world, and that if the LPL was properly run, especially given that CSK have already scouted Patarana out of nowhere, taken Theeks when he was very young, that there's that natural link there. So if SLC can just get the LPL together and make it a viable, consistent product, I think IPL investment would be a no-brainer. Would be massively beneficial for Sri Lanka. It's my plan.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Absolutely, man. Bring on the Tamils, the Jaffna Super Kings, right? That's what we all want.
They're already the Jaffna Kings, right? Are they, or they've changed their name again?
I don't know if they have.
Yeah. Jaffna Super Kings, they can poke evolved from Kings to Super Kings. Ben, before we let you go, I think it'd be great if we could have a little chat about just your kind of general experience in Sri Lanka, out with cricket, out with academic research. I mean, how did you find the food? You talked about lion. Are you fond of arak? What was if you could go back and talk to yourself from 2015 before you left, what would be your advice for yourself going to Sri Lanka?
That is a great question. I thought there'd be more questions about this. We talked a hell of a lot more about cricket than I expected. I loved it. It's so great. I'd encourage anyone who's thinking about going to Sri Lanka to go. And I mean, go when there's a tour. Like England are touring for quite regularly in Sri Lanka and for quite extended periods. But like, you don't have to go when there's an England tour. Go when there's an Australia, Pakistan, whoever. There's always cricket on. It's always a really good vibe. I would tell myself, my past self, to give myself over to it a bit more. So, like, by that, I mean, like, I'm not an anxious person, but when you're a solo traveler, sometimes you can be a bit worried if you're, like, offered to, like, people might offer you a cup of tea, like, come in and have a cup of tea and have a chat, or, like, come with us to this place. We're going to go do this cool thing. Come and see my farm or something. And I would always be a bit hesitant to kind of go and do those things because I was always worried about what if something goes wrong? What are this person's intentions? Whatever. I'm not telling anyone. Disclaimer: not telling anyone to go and put themselves in dangerous situations, but I think just believing that people are just so happy to kind of like get to know you, to talk to you about stuff, to like invite you in and show you. Sri Lankans are so proud of their country, and rightly so. And I think one thing that I wish I did more is like chase those situations. Like Nick has probably very similar experiences of like where people just randomly tell you some incredible fact and like invite you into some place, and then you have a great time. And that serendipity kind of thing comes into it. But I mean, yeah, and just eat more of the food. Eat all of the food that you can. Sri Lankan food is incredible.
I'm trying here, mate. I'm trying.
I mean, I'm so sad about like how far away I am from London, because London is the only place that I've found that like has food that is kind of Nick and I. Every time I come down to London and maybe see Nick, we go to Everest in Lewisham. It is Everest, right? Yeah.
Sure
They do
is.
they do a solid feed there. It is really, really good. The waiter there was a bit taken aback when I started talking to him in my little bit of singular that I've got left. Like I think just just give yourself over to it. I mean, I want to hear about what Nick enjoyed as well, because obviously we spent a lot of time going to games and enjoying together.
It's just, it's the most incredibly special place, right? And I echo what you said, Ben, about throwing myself into it. I was actually talking to a Sri Lankan friend about this very thing last night. I was telling her about how I was on the receiving end of a couple of scams in my first week in Sri Lanka, and, which is something that can happen. And that made me pretty tentative. Like afterwards, when someone would say, "Why don't you come?" like and visit my village, I was always a bit scared about what might happen, but I wish I had thrown myself into those experiences more. But yeah, it's just the most magical place. Like we keep talking about serendipity. I found my time in Sri Lanka was so kind of impacted by those sort of moments. They're like friendships you make, the daily interactions that you have with people, which seem to involves so much more warmth than in the UK. I remember coming back to London and saying hi to everyone on the street and people looking at me like I was from Mars. And it's just, that sort of side of life I think is really lovely. And it's the most incredible place to watch cricket, right? Especially Gaul. I found that every time I went and watch cricket at Gaul, I would just have the best day. I'd meet 25 new people. I'd get into all sorts of situations that I never imagined. And what a beautiful, special thing to be able to stay in the fort, to walk to the ground and then go for a swim at the close of play. Like there's nothing else like that, I don't think, anywhere in the world.
In terms of like my best, when I think about my best days watching cricket, they're almost all of them are in Gaul. I strongly remember on the 2018 tour watching Ben Folkes hit his maiden ton, and we sat on the fort and watched that whole innings, and it was just like the vibe. I mean, the papare was going. We'd kind of the English fans are intermingled in there as well. The Barmy Army were kind of in strong voice, and just this wonderful vista of cricket and the other people watching it. Which you just don't get anywhere else. And I think that one of Sri Lanka's like kind of core, I suppose strength is the wrong word, but like it's so easy to meet people. It's so easy to get connections in a way that you just couldn't in the UK. Like there's no way that I could meet people from the ECB by just walking in off the street. Whereas if you're in Sri Lanka, you can kind of go into the SLC and like say, oh, I'm a researcher, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Nick and I both traded on a little bit about like who we were as people, what our position was, and that opened doors that just would not have opened in other countries. Lastly, just a huge shout out to Short Eats. I don't know if I'm sure that lots of people listening to this podcast will be familiar with Short Eats, but like I'm sad every day that I can't eat a mutton roll. Like I just want a lovely little mutton roll or a little samosa or something. Nick and I, when we went to a fish bun is like my absolute joy. Nick and I used to go to, there was a bakery at Family Super, which is just at the top of our road in Mount Lavinia. And we would go there and get a little hot dog bun, a few fish buns. We get a couple of iced coffees, and we take our little plastic bag to the ground to SSC usually, and we'd go and sit there all day. Nick had this like polystyrene container, Arpico Cool Box, which he filled with ice, a bottle of Arak in there, some Sprite. I was a big fan of Arak with Sprite. I do like it neat, but that's my favorite mixer. And we would just go, and the line lagers were they were 150 rupees when we were there. It's like 75p a beer. You would just, and yeah, sure, they're a little bit watered down, but you actually appreciate that on a hot day. 34 degrees in the baking sun. One of my fondest memories, Nick, as well. We both went to this, was the big match to the Royal Thomian in did we go in 2019? I want to say we went in
2019,
2019.
yeah.
Just an insane 3 days of cricket and just partying and meeting people. And like I have really been critical of the public school system and the kind of things that it perpetuates. That class system is I think goes against a lot of what Sri Lankan cricket should be about. But it is hard to deny the spectacle of that game, and it is hard to deny the enthusiasm and the love for cricket that comes through. So yeah, if anyone gets a chance to go, throw yourself into it and just have a good time. There's so much to love.
Yeah.
Ben, go on, Nick.
No, I was just going to say, like, the big match is an incredible, incomparable, like, experience. I think the atmosphere, the only time I've experienced it live, anything kind of even approaching that kind of buzz, was the first day of an Ashes test at Lords. And it's like, that sounds hyperbolic. It really isn't. Like, the whole energy around it, like how much it means to people and how much revelry there is like honestly like right up there.
Yeah, I mean, like the Ashes at Lords, I mean, you'll just get that murmur, you'll get that like hubbub that people talk about. You do not get that in Sri Lankan cricket. You get like noise, like the papare. There's probably 20 different papare bands around the ground, and you only have to move like 20 foot to hear another band playing. It's like it's a wall of sound, and it just, the energy is insane. It's so insane.
One of the most god awful karaoke I've ever heard.
Yes, yeah. A lot of our pictures, I've got lots of pictures, and we are getting progressively more drunk throughout all of them. The quality of the research that we were doing dipped massively as we went by, but I mean, we were very fortunate with that, to be invited, and I want to thank the former principal of St Thomas's for bringing us both along and setting all that up for us.
I would love to know a little bit more about the evolution and history of papare as well. Like, where did it come from? How is it? I mean, is there any genre of music in the world that is so synonymous with not just a particular sport, but a particular sport in one particular country? I don't know. Like, maybe in Uruguay they've got something. Who knows? But like, whenever I hear papare, I just think cricket, and I love it. So I love the sound of it so much. I was going to ask Ben. Go on.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to ask. You're an academic in Durham. Obviously, Durham holds a almost mythological place in Sri Lankan cricket folklore. It's where Rihanna watched us. It's where Vishka scored a century, and it's where 3 of our players got absolutely told off. What's next for you, though? Is it going to be Durham Sri Lanka cricket based, or something slightly different?
Yeah, I was very sad that I wasn't in the market square when De Quella and Kusal were there, kind of messing about. It was very funny watching, because I'm in WhatsApp chats with the teams that I played for, and it's very bizarre seeing these videos of those guys in Durham being idiots. Like, just really odd to see them in the place where I work and live. I am very fortunate. I just secured a 2-year role here in the Department of Sport and Exercise Sciences. So I'm moving down the road from anthropology, and I'm taking up like a kind of lecturer role. But in terms of research, I'm focusing on broadening out that relationship, thinking about how sport and social change work together. So you remember before I said that it's kind of what sport is. It's not what cricket is as such. Like, I'm interested in thinking about that sport for development side of it and how we might do that transforming work. So that is the next kind of big project for me. That will be something I work towards kind of submitting in a couple of years' time. But before then, I'm gonna hopefully turn my thesis into a book. That's kind of the next step for me. There is possibly like a popular book in there as well. Like I want to write the academic book because that would be a really important marker in my career. But then I want to like get my experiences and get my story out like to a broader audience because I think it's something that would be interesting for people that just love cricket. I'm really fortunate that because I study cricket, like I think more people have read my thesis than well, more people have read it than for other PhD students because typically, your examiners read it and kind of no one else because you write about this very specific thing. But because I wrote about cricket in Sri Lanka, I've had a huge amount of people get in touch and kind of read it. So yeah, there's that. There's a little bit of work on kind of. I did this really great project with I attached GoPros to cricketers' helmets, and I videoed them doing a net session, and we talk about it afterwards. And I wrote about it in a book that we've just published, which is Anthropology in Sporting Worlds. We talk about like the kind of the role of digital technologies in how sport is played and enjoyed these days. So there's kind of I want to expand that project a bit. I only did some very preliminary interviews with people in the field, but I want to do a bit more work on that. It's kind of thinking about how change happens at the micro scale. So like how people develop their ideas, how they so not just how do they understand sport and the idea of control, but how do they feel that in the body? How do they decide what to do as a consequence? This tension between form and creativity that is so like prominent in sport. We called our panel "Poetry in Motion," kind of as an allusion to that idea that we have these concepts and we live them out in our sporting lives. And I think that's kind of what I'm interested in doing next.
Fascinating stuff. I'm sure we're all looking forward to your next bit of work.
And we
Ben,
should also say, right, Marky, that the thesis is available publicly online, right, Ben?
Yeah, if anyone wants to read it, the embargo was lifted about a year ago, so the link, I suppose you can put the link out in the description.
We'll put it in the description. Yeah.
And the word
if anyone
sounds daunting. The word thesis sounds very daunting if you're a bit of a dunce like me, but it belies how readable and like engaging it is. So I thoroughly recommend it.
Yeah, I was given a great piece of advice by a colleague, which was to write your thesis as much like a book as you can, so that when you try and turn it into a book, it's already halfway there. So yeah, I am really proud of it. I think it. There's obviously a lot of stuff I would change. Looking back over it for this made me realize the work I have to do to take it into the book form. But yeah, if anyone ever wants to get in touch and talk about stuff that I mention in the thesis, then feel free to get in touch. My details are on that page, and they can find me.
Yeah, and I'll put a link to your Twitter account and all other social.
Yeah, I don't really.
Yeah,
I don't really use it anymore.
No,
it's bizarre.
I don't know if you've got an Instagram account. I imagine it's just pictures of Marlipan and Lion.
Oh my god, Maliban! We didn't even talk about Maliban.
Yeah, exactly.
We didn't talk about the fact that Nick used to live next to the factory, and his house just smelled of biscuits all day long. It was great.
Biscuit smell all day long.
Oh, is that why they call you Lemon Puff Nick?
It was so weird. I would go around to visit Nick, and just occasionally, like if it was a slightly sort of overcast day, just the smell of biscuits like would waft through the palm trees. It's a really bizarre feeling to have this like tropical environment and the smell of lemon puffs, but
just that waft of like maltiness.
Yeah. Yes. what were we saying, Mark?
I was going to say,
Sorry, I
I'll
can't
leave your
remember.
contact details in the description. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you, send you any questions we haven't asked, anything, if you're watching this or listening to this, you're probably being like, why didn't they ask this? Why didn't they ask that? Why is Mark such an idiot? But it's fine. You can get in touch with Ben, drop him an email, drop him a text. I probably won't put your phone number in there, but maybe your email.
Please don't do that. I'm on Bluesky, and I also run a sport network which is on Instagram, but we don't really use Instagram that much. And weirdly these days it's all LinkedIn, isn't it? It's kind of changed. It's become this social hub rather than a career thing. But there's various channels, and I'm always very happy to have chats with people.
Yeah, 5 lessons I learned from Kissel Mendes's career upturn since the Durham incident would be my LinkedIn post. Anyway, guys, should we leave it there? Should we wrap it up for today? Ben, thanks for joining us. Hopefully we'll get you back on soon. Talk about your next piece of work. We'll be back soon enough with some more great Shrunken Cricket content. If you like what you've heard, what you've listened to, please do send it on to other people. I think this episode in particular isn't just something for Shrunken Cricket fans. It could be fans of Sri Lanka in general, non-cricket fans, but also of sport in general and what's the impact sport can play if applied the right way. Anyway, thank you all for listening. Please do hit the subscribe and follow and like. I imagine if you got through over an hour of this and you haven't done so already, there's nothing else I could say that's going to let you do that. But thanks for getting here. See you all soon. Bye.